Hello and welcome to the Lund University International Podcast. On the show, you'll hear from current students, alumni, teachers, and many more special guests as we explore what it's really like to live and study in Lund. My name is Rebecca and I am a regional recruitment coordinator. Today we are joined by Kasia, who is one of our researchers and teachers in the field of ethnology here at Lund University. So Kasia, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Really nice to have you here. Would you like to introduce yourself, just describe a little bit what programs you're teaching on or coordinating, and anything else you just want to say about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Kasia Herd. I'm originally from Poland. I lived and studied in Finland. Then I lived and studied in Sweden, still do. I also studied in Iceland a bit and actually in Norway. I always had a thing for languages, but somehow I ended up in the field of ethnology through the program of applied cultural analysis at Lund University at the cultural sciences. At the Faculty of Humanities. I completed that and then I applied for a PhD. Funny enough, in football. Never thought I would actually study football, but I got mesmerized by not knowing exactly what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I stayed there and I finished my PhD and worked my way through small projects and teaching hours, and now I am actually officially a teacher at the department. And I teach at the bachelor program in ethnology. I teach at the applied cultural analysis. I'm a program coordinator there. And depending on the need of different departments, I was also at digital cultures. I was at intermedia studies, for example. So media and communication as well.
Yeah. And how many years now have you lived in Sweden then? So
from 2009.
Okay. So quite some time.
Quite some time,
yes. But it's really cool that you've gone through that journey yourself of being an international student and then becoming, and then PhD, and then actually becoming a researcher and stuff.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I didn't know Swedish when I arrived either. So I went through all the sort of stages of learning Swedish. I remember the frustration was like, why do I need to go through this again? Because I did that in Finland. I was perfectly happy with that. But slowly but surely. And it became so.
Yeah, that's great. And like maybe here is where we should mention that we do also already know each other because I also am an alumni of the Masters in Applied Cultural Analysis, which is one of our international programs taught in English. And in fact, Kasia was my supervisor for my masters, so we know each other pretty well, and it's been quite fun over the years, like talking about some of these topics, and now we get the chance to actually speak as part of my work, which is kind of fun. But yeah, so that's really cool. And yeah, you already mentioned that you studied the topic of football, but would you like to say a little bit more about that field and maybe how that relates to ethnology? Because I think perhaps some people listening may be interested in that field, but some people might not actually know really what that is either. And I know we can't really go into huge detail on what that is, but just...
Of course. Well, ethnology as a discipline is, I think, well grounded in Europe, but some of our teachers, researchers, when they travel like overseas to the US, they actually use the term cultural anthropology as more relating to that, but basically the same sort of thing. It's started with the tradition of trying to collect and preserve the bits of the old society that was disappearing together with the industrialization that was going on. So this is kind of like the origin of the discipline. Yeah. All the old houses, the habits, the traditions, the dresses, and so on, and it's slowly built up. So the first ethnology is kind of archive based and museum based, but then we migrated to the streets, if you want. Maybe like to say that. The thing with ethnology is that we try to say to our students that the exotic is like right there in the restaurant next door, in the cafe. You can see and ponder kind of thing like, this is so strange why people do this. Like we don't have to travel like, to foreign countries to kind of, be amazed how strange people are and how many strange rules and regulations and rituals they have. And we can study that and say something, because people are complicated, and we kind of say sometimes we translate people to people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Once you start seeing the kind of cultural practices around you, it's like you can't really stop seeing it anymore, I feel like. And ethnology is one of those fields where there is such a broad range of things that people can study. That's what always occurred to me when I was studying the Applied Cultural Analysis program, is just how broad that was, and how people were studying like flatbreads and cycling and, you know, like just such a wide range.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah. So in that context, football is not such a strange field in a way.
No, I always thought so. Though it's not extremely popular to study, and I don't know why. Maybe because it's not like fancy. But once in the stadium, I was looking at this crowd, and like I understand how it's played on the pitch. I mean, like most of us do. Yeah. But then when you look how the crowd is behaving, it's strange. It's like, why do you do this? Why the screaming? Why the performances all around? So it kind of stayed with me, and I thought it would be pretty cool to kind of try to dig deeper. And I was in this interesting situation when I could ask the question, like, what is it? Why is it? Could you explain to me? And because I was a foreign student, and I was a woman, and my Swedish was not the strongest, I was kind of embraced, like, yes, we will teach you what Swedish football is.
Nice,
and that was my entry. But it was never, I never felt like it was like patronized or anything like that. It was very open and very welcoming, actually.
Yeah, that's so interesting and cool. Like, yeah, and so that was part of your master's. Yeah. And then you decided to continue studying that for PhD and beyond.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was basically... There are different ways to try to find a PhD, but in Sweden you have to have a fully financed position. Yeah. So there are those like graduate schools, and for example, the Faculty of Humanities have a graduate school of historical studies, I think it's called nowadays. Yeah. So not only history, but disciplines that can deal with history. So that was basically that. You have to have a historical kind of twist. Okay. And I was thinking, like, what can I do? And some people were like, there's a lot of history in football. And I thought, yeah, but that's a bit boring. But then it kind of struck me how often people manipulate with those tiny stories of like and references like from the past and apply nowadays, like, and sometimes to get a joke, you have to understand that, this was a player that played in the 80s, but he played in another team, and he scored with another team, which meant that team that you hate suffered. so that was this complicated story that is based on history. So that was kind of my entry point, like how do we construct history using football as a background, because also it's very not often that as a person you go somewhere in your daily life and you can feel, I'm gonna make history today, because this match can be very important. There can be a very, very good goal or some sort of situation on the pitch, or police comes all of a sudden, or there's something can happens, be in the media, and you're gonna see it in newspapers and you can say, I've been there.
Yeah, unique kind of situation. So I know it's probably difficult, but if you had to sort of provide a bit of like an overview into some of the key things that you have looked into. So you've said about this kind of making history and how the meaning is created from the past and those references and that like almost mythology, I guess, is kind of where it comes in. Is there any other like key points that you really focus on that you want to talk about?
I liked studying players. Yeah. I thought they were very interesting because as a work group, as a profession, they are just mesmerizing how they have to change the clubs and they kind of have to buy into this idea how this market works, and yet they're not very comfortable with that, and there's a lot of miscomprehensions as well about them. So I had a little project as well about the transfer patterns, like how they make sense of what's happening to them, really. And that was interesting, especially because I talked to scouts, and some of the scouts, those that find players and buy them for clubs, some of them are very cold-hearted. Like there is no mercy. Like, they are just products. They are here for a season. You're supposed to score and be sold for a better sum of money, which sounds really horrible.
No, but that's the terms they use, isn't it? Buying and selling players and stuff like this. So they are like, reduced to that.
Yeah, they are commodities.
Exactly,
I also had my postdoc about Swedish-speaking football clubs in Finland.
Ah, okay.
Because the thing that got me that there are football clubs in Finland that are older than Finland. Because Finland got, officially Finland got independence 1817.
Okay.
And you have those clubs based on the Swedish EFK structure.
Yeah.
Also, there is Helsingfors EFK, for example, or in Åbo EFK.
And this is like the league type structure.
Yeah. They were
or like the association.
Yeah. So in Finland, Finland had very still strong ties to Sweden during that time, during the 19th century, even though it was not Sweden. And in Sweden, they started building those sport clubs built on just interest. And they were called Idrottsförening something, so EFK.
I see.
Idrottsföreningsklubb.
Yeah.
So like the sport associations.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And there were places in Finland with Swedish population that got very interested, and and what was very sort of sweet was that they were established by school children. I mean, the guy who kind of started this whole thing was like 16, 17. He sent like a little letter to a little magazine, like, I like a sport. Would anyone like to sport? And they start popping like mushrooms. And nowadays in Sweden you have EFK Göteborg, which is very big. EFK Norrköping. They are part of the same sort of original structure. And then the Finnish students went like, oh, that sounds good. Can we have one too? And the Swedes go, yeah, sure. So they built like in the late 19th century, they built some that still survive today.
Yeah.
And some of them have still Swedish as their first language.
Ah, okay.
Or they have
fascinating. Yeah.
So this whole thing about identity, but also the cultural communication between the countries and how much you can actually take using sport or football as a vessel, like how many ideas can travel. And I was thinking about it, that maybe this was also allowed to happen because Finland was under Russia and the censorship was pretty hard and everything, but sport is never considered that dangerous. If you even think that sport is popular culture, it does not sound that horrible that it's gonna introduce those wicked ideas to your society. And I think this is the part also that brings the new sort of sport washing questions.
Yes, I was gonna ask about this.
Yeah, because like Qatar and everything, I think it's sort of acceptable with sport because it doesn't sound dangerous. There are no lyrics that are revolutionary. There are no movie scenes that you have to delete. You have just ample bodies on the field, and if they know how to behave on the field, then that's fine. Yeah.
But tell us about this sport washing term and like what that means, and what kind of your research has said about this.
I mean, this kind of happened by accident. I haven't really done that much about it, but I was forced to formulate something when 2022 Football World Cup was in Qatar. There was so much discussion about it and was all over the media. And I was thinking with some other researchers, like, why is it so strong and why do we react so strong? Because in a sense, Qatar is not doing anything exceptional. Like this happens all the time. You want to have this big mega event and so kind of like entertain your audience, and it's an old sort of Roman way to rule, like some bread and some fun, then you're happy. But somehow something there was like
because there was lots of like protests and things around this. If anyone doesn't remember this.
Absolutely. I mean, some things were clearly controversial, like the treatment of international workforce that they had in Qatar. There were lots of deaths. It was very, very bad. And of course, this thing that is there a really football interest in this country? Like how much
did this happen?
Exactly. How much is it really that boys and girls can go on the field and
Right.
and have some fun with balls.
Yeah.
And the general understanding was not so much. So for me, it kind of became an example how we can see football as a part of popular culture. And in popular culture, we still have quite a lot moralizing going on. Like if you think about what we look in a series or a movie, it's always a hero that fights the system. It's a hero that stays true to himself or herself. An example I used was Pirates of the Caribbean. Because we all, for the pirates, I'm still to see anyone to go for the for the East India Company
or whatever.
Exactly. And it's also a fun movie because the evil that is there is not a king, it's not a country, it's not an army, it's a capitalist. So it's kind of, it's like this lovely example. And in a way, from the Swedish perspective, the worst that can happen is that someone's gonna buy your club, change the colors, change the name, like reroute it from its traditions, and made it into this sort of commercial sort of token and a toy. And they treat it very, very seriously as something that is rooted in the local society and in the tradition that they have, and that it carries something with it.
Which is why it's such a good field for ethnology, I guess, because that is really what we what we're looking at is that kind
exactly.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. So the sports washing term was really referring to this idea of, taking away some of that. I didn't
talk about the term at all.
I returned to it again because I am very fascinated in it.
I don't know, like sort of greenwashing. It has the same background. Like something that is, it's supposed to take away the focus from maybe some bad, controversial, or not that great stuff that is happening in a given country. It's quite often it applies to what we would classify as a regime. So a country that is not run on democratic basis, but you have a strong ruling, family or a group of individuals that basically control it, and they try to use sport as to lighten up the mood and also their own image. And the most famous, I think, example used is the Olympics in Berlin in 1936 and all going down to.
But that is
Nazi
so fascinating
Germany.
because, of course, we have seen more and more people get an understanding of, for example, greenwashing or whatever. But it is so interesting that sport does get kind of passed over a little with some of these, some of this attention or even some of these studies. So it's great that somebody is studying this and noticing this.
There's a lot of things being published, but also there is this. So there was a lot of things published already, but many researchers question the very term and why is it us on the Western side with our Western ideas to decide this is sport washing when we basically do the same thing just on a different scale.
I see.
So of course there are those very strong, almost brutal examples like Argentina. I think 1976 there was a World Cup too, and that was when the military junta was in charge a couple years ago. They took over, which was extremely brutal, like murdering people, dropping people from planes to the ocean, And here we have some fun. Here we have some football. But so comparing this to maybe, I don't know, Qatar or Saudi Arabia, of course, many would argue that this is not the same thing and it's on different premises. But for example, with Saudi Arabia, I've also heard that, it is part of the program. It's part of the program to keep the young population, which is big, happy and contained. So there is no actual change to the structure. No one wants to have any sort of more democratic ideas, but a little bit of sport could be nice. So I don't remember the year, but it happened actually that women were allowed to actually enter the stadiums finally in Saudi Arabia. It was quite recent, maybe 2 years ago, but it happened. So something happened. But they also had a project to make the first opera in Arabic.
Okay.
And it's also part of the same plan. We can produce culture as well. But this is through, outsourcing the best operas in Europe, the best composers in Europe, the best singers in Europe. This is kind of the same sort of plan. We're buying that. And there's also been a case when now at the Olympics in Paris. Yes.
Yeah.
They had a beach volleyball team that went to the like final or semi-final, but it was basically almost like a job announcement. Who would like a passport to actually be on that team? And it was deemed extremely controversial. And the players were from 2 African countries. One was, I think, Ghana. Oh, I don't remember. I don't want to maybe that. But, two different African countries. And they were very, very good. And I was actually discussing that with one journalist, like, is this sport washing? It's like, actually, yeah, you buy yourself, a trophy. But at the same time, well, this is how they run. We want the best professionals to do the job. So, of course, we want beach volleyball players to win gold, because that was the point. An Olympic gold would be nice, right? Yeah. It looks nice in a cabinet,
But it's interesting how we can problematize these questions as well, and not. I think that's cool as well about this field, and also about the program as well that you obviously are program coordinator for. Yeah. Is that that is one of the fun things that I experienced, was having those discussions over, for example, these terms, and people viewing them in different ways, or these examples, and people seeing them in different perspectives, and trying to interrogate not only those different perspectives, but our own lens and how we're viewing it. And that's kind of illustrative, I think, of what you've just said, with all of those different ways of looking at that. Yeah, that's so interesting. So, I guess... maybe we can actually sort of end the conversation a little bit with bringing it back to the program, or bringing it back to Lund and Sweden, and what you would maybe say about anybody who's listening who is interested in this field and might be thinking about studying with us, and now is probably got lots of ideas in their head. Maybe they're not thinking about studying football, but they're kind of getting a sense for okay, this is the kind of thing, this is the kind of discussions that we can have, this is the kind of area that we could study, or the way that we look at the world, even on that broad level. So is there anything that you would like to add about what makes Lund or Sweden a good place to study ethnology, or maybe what the program of applied cultural analysis has to offer? I think Swedish ethnology is very strong and very well present, even in the international scene. And I think our program offers students basically what you said, a possibility to interrogate and question, but at the same time learn the skills to do that in the not only in the academia but also in the business world. Of course.
Which has always been appreciated. And we've had students that came and had a very clear idea that I am here because I want to write about this, and I think I will be allowed to do that. So working on AI, for example, right now, we had a student working on Thai boxing. When it comes to sport, of course, your brilliant text on karate kids. So there is a massive range of subjects, and it also shows how students can focus their own attention and their own interest and kind of channel that into a subject, and there are basically no restrictions. As long as it's well done, then we're happy with it. So we had everything under the sun, I think.
That's also the impression I had as well studying it, and I think it's a really cool thing to know for those who are coming, that like you said, there's that history here, there is that kind of respect for that for that field, but also that now it is a bit like anything goes, and you can really focus on whatever really inspires you, and just use these different lenses and tools to approach it.
I think what sort of binds us, makes our frame, are the methods, which are the qualitative methods, and a way of applying different theories to understand what we study. But what you study, what you're going to operate on, so that's basically up to you.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's where we'll end today, but thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Lund University International Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about Lund University, you can go to our website, lunduniversity.lu.se. You can also follow us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook and X, and you can chat with current students on Unibuddy. Don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to bringing you a new episode very soon.